We interrupt Kevin Andrews to take him to Kevin Andrews, live speaking in Canberra. Let's take a listen.
Budget repair continued today. Today we've seen the passage of the first tranche of welfare reforms in the House of Representatives, and we believe that that bill will obviously pass through the Senate as well. In doing so, that involves a saving of $2.7 billion to the budget against Labor's legacy of deficit and debt. So despite the shrill rhetoric from the Leader of the Opposition this morning, the government is getting on with the challenges of dealing with the legacy that we inherited from the Labor Party. Can I say that budget repair and indeed welfare reform is an ongoing process. We've reintroduced other bills into the House, which will obviously go to the Senate, and they will form the basis of further discussions and negotiations with the crossbenchers in the Senate over the coming days and weeks. But welfare reform is not something that happens overnight. It's something which we are committed to. We are committed to these measures, and we will continue to prosecute them. We'll also obviously take into account, when it comes to us, the report of the McClure inquiry and the report we also have from Mr Forrest in relation to matters that relate to welfare as well. So welfare reform is still at the heart of the government's agenda, and we'll continue to prosecute these matters.
Minister, couple of questions. When do you when do you expect this bill to go through the Senate?
I presume in the next sitting of the Senate. I understand the Senate have got an estimates week coming up, and then they'd have another sitting, so I expect it would go through there, but that's always subject to the machinations of the Senate.
More specifically, you said you've repackaged these measures into 4 bills, one of which is going through. What's the strategy behind the 3? Are they sort of lumping pensions together and family benefits?
Look, the packaging of the bills reflects in part the discussions that we've had with the crossbenchers, and we will continue to have those discussions in future, but we believe that packaging the bills these ways may be more attractive to those discussions in the future.
What's the chance of getting them through?
Well, as you know, the Senate is varied. Many and varied voices in the Senate these days, and any party in government has to actually try and work out the various combinations and permutations.
What is your talks with the Greens? They seem open to the senior supplement being stopped, but say there's no deal. Are you talking to them? When did you last talk to them?
Look, I'm not going to go into the detail of discussions. I've been having discussions for the last few weeks, in particular with many people in the Senate. I don't think it's helpful for me to be giving a ball-by-ball commentary on what's happening in those discussions. I treat all of the senators with the due respect that they deserve as elected members of the Australian Senate. We've had useful discussions about a variety of issues, and we'll continue to do that. But as I said, I'm patient, and I know that this is an ongoing process which we're committed to.
Just to be clear, those other bills, so of the 4 bills, putting aside the one that you expect to pass straight up, do they contain all of the measures you previously announced in this space? Yes, you haven't walked away. You have,
no, we haven't walked away.
You haven't actually excluded any of the previous measures.
No,
You've just put them into the other bills.
No, we've repackaged the measures into the new bills which I introduced this morning.
Can I ask about the process? Why you still haven't got the McClure report? Why are there so many changes to welfare before you've even had the McClure report?
Well, these are changes which arose out of our deliberations leading up to the budget. And we are committed to welfare reform, we always have been, and we're committed to budget repair. And can I remind you that this is one of the 4 key things which the government is seeking to do, or has sought to do: stop the boats, and abolish the carbon tax and the mining tax. Those 2 things have largely now been achieved. Welfare reform is part of the budget repair process, which we're committed to, and when that's an ongoing process, it's not happening overnight. And then finally, there's the issues in relation to the building of the infrastructure. So the government's agenda is quite clear in this regard, and I think we are on a clear pathway in terms of trying to achieve each of those 4 things.
Labor seemed pretty chuffed this morning while they were in the House.
Well, the irony of Labor in the House this morning was I sat there and listened to Mr Shorten's, I thought, fairly shrill comments, and then Ms Macklin's comments. Until challenged, neither of them actually spoke about the bill. It was as if we're going to talk about everything else because we don't want to let people know that we're actually voting. Despite our huffing and puffing over the last few months that we're opposed to all of this, this morning they have actually passed a number of very significant measures, and in addition to that, they've allowed us to bring about a $2.7 billion repair towards the legacy that we inherited from them in terms of the deficit and the debt of this country. So, you know, I was sitting there quite bemused because they weren't talking about the bill that they're actually supporting, and if you'd been sitting in the gallery or listening on your monitors like you were, you would hardly have known that they're actually supporting a bill that involved $2.7 billion worth of savings. So, seems
back down by the government.
Far from it. As in the answer to the previous question, we are committed to these packages, but we are realistic in terms that we have to deal with and discuss and negotiate with the new Senate. And if that means repackaging bills that will help us in those discussions, then that's what we're prepared to do, and that's what we've done this morning.
So, Minister, why did you decide to split the youth portions of the bill? Why, like, obviously you got the youth allowance portion moved today, but what about changing for the 6-month wait for under 30s? Why did you decide to split them?
Well, you'll see that there's a bill which relates to the senior supplement largely. There's a bill that relates to all the other measures that are not the pension measures, and then there's the bill that relates to essentially the pension measures, remembering that the pension measures have as their implementation dates 2017 and beyond. So we've just split it into a way in which we think brings together subjects in a way that there's a commonality about those subjects, and as I said, obviously this is a way in which we can continue the discussions with crossbenchers.
So how are the negotiations for the 6-month wait going? Because obviously...
Well, as I said to the previous question, I'm not going to provide a ball-by-ball description of my discussions with the crossbenchers. I think it's important that we've approached the discussions with the crossbenchers with good faith. We treat them as people who have got their own views about how we should be doing things. But one thing I have found is that I think there is a general commitment that we need to continue to make improvements to the welfare system, and we need to encourage people wherever possible to be in work rather than be condemned to months, years or even decades in some instances being on welfare. So,
I mean, the 6-month wait looks like it's something that you're going to obviously have to negotiate on. Are you obviously you don't want to talk about what you're saying, but are you at all considering bringing it back to maybe a 1-month wait or a couple of weeks?
I'm not going to get into a discussion about the subject matter of any negotiations, except to say that our principal position is that we are committed to the measures which have been reintroduced in these bills, but obviously we will sensibly talk to the crossbenchers about any propositions that they might have, and that's what I've been doing, and that's what I will continue to do.
Mr. Andrews, in the lead up, are you conceding that they were in fact in trouble by repackaging these bills?
No, we've got through $2.7 billion worth of savings effectively this morning. We've got through a range of measures that we've been committed to. That's actually success, and I hope that we can continue to build on that success and with the discussions with the crossbenchers get some more measures through the Parliament, because we are committed to welfare reform. We think people should be in work rather than on welfare if they possibly can be, and we are definitely committed to repairing the legacy of deficit and debt we inherited from Labor. So this has been actually a successful morning for us in that we've got through one tranche of some welfare review.
Minister, you've got $9 billion in savings you would like to get, but Labor, the Greens, Palmer and some of the others don't accept them. Why has it been reasonable to keep those in the budget when there doesn't seem to be any realistic prospect of them getting through?
Well, I disagree with you that there's no realistic prospect.
Why is it reasonable to keep them in the budget papers if there's not really a prospect of them getting through?
Well, that's your judgment and not mine.
Mr.
Yes.
Andrews, in the lead up to the budget, did you argue internally against any of these measures that are in these bills?
I don't discuss any internal discussions that we have. These are the government's propositions. They're propositions that I fully support, and I've been arguing and advocating for weeks and months since the budget process, and I will continue to do so.
But were these ideas dished up by Treasury that you had to run with, or did you advocate
your question anymore?
So, just a practical application, the 6-month wait provision. How would that apply, for example, to a university graduate who can't find work? Say someone comes out with an arts or a science degree and they can't find work. Would they have to wait 6 months before they could get a job?
Well, they could do some other training program that would actually help them to get a job. Well, no.
What if you have a science degree? What do you do for science?
Many university degrees these days are general, if I can put it that way. You've got the University of Melbourne that's actually moved towards having a more general first degree. Many people then go on and do some form of what I might call vocational training that will actually make use of those general degree skills they've got to be able to then get a particular job in a particular area. It might be going and doing training to be a journalist. It might be, a whole range of things. I mean,
can you say, well, what's the point if you say you don't want to be a journalist, you want to be a microbiologist, you do a Bachelor of Science in microbiology, you can't find work immediately.
Many people... I'm a good example of somebody who couldn't immediately get the job he wanted and took a job I could get and used that as a stepping stone. And I think we need to encourage young people to get a job. We live in a world, we talk about a world in which, people have, I've heard it said, on average 7 or 8 jobs in their lifetime. So often the first job is the stepping stone to getting another job. And for many of us, the job that we ultimately wanted wasn't the first one we got. We worked up towards that. And I think we have to encourage people.
Sorry, if someone is freshly unemployed and they go to the Centrelink office, can they get straight on work for the dole? Or do they have to wait 6 months before they can get on work?
Well, you're confusing a few things now. Firstly, the earn or learn provision is basically that if you are under 30 and you're not in the exempt categories, and remember we've exempted people who can't work full-time, so if you can't work 30 hours or more a week, you're exempted. If you've essentially got parenting responsibilities, you get the family tax benefit, you're exempted. If you're a disadvantaged job seeker, you're on stream 3 and 4 in the job network, then you're exempted. And there's some other exemptions as well from that. So essentially what we've done is try to narrow this down to people under 30 or outside those exemptions who are capable of working full-time. And all we're saying is that if you're not working, then we expect you to be doing some sort of training that will help you get a job in the future. It's only if you don't do either of those things that these provisions start to come into play.
Mr Andrews, what are your thoughts on the burqa? Do you have any concerns about people wearing it? Should there be restrictions on it?
Look, I personally find the burqa rather medieval. I think it is demeaning to women, but having said that, I don't believe that we should ban the burqa in Australia.
Any restrictions on it at all in public places, in Parliament House?
Look, for places like Parliament House, that's obviously a matter for the presiding officers who are responsible for Parliament House. The only thing that I would say is that any provisions relating to security ought to apply to all people, regardless of who they are.
By saying medieval, how does that help the current efforts of the government to reach out to the Islamic community and have them partners with you in the fight against terrorism? How does that help?
Many people in the Islamic community don't wear the burqa. There's some who choose to do it, but I was asked what my view about it was, and that's what I've said. But I've said, well, I wouldn't ban it. I don't think we should get into the position of banning particular forms of dress in the society in which we live. That seems to me contrary to the liberal Western principles upon which our civilisation and society is built. But I do think that it's, as I said, I think it's demeaning to women.
Just on back to the measures that potentially won't pass, the ones that won't go through with Labor support, will they still count towards the budget bottom line in MyEFO? If they are
well, if there'll be no change in MyEFO for matters which are still part of what the government's proposals are. That's as my understanding of it, but I'm not the technical expert on that. You need to talk to Senator Cormann or the Treasurer.
You say you're a patient man. Could it be well into next year?
The Social Services Minister, Kevin Andrews, there.